Okay, and I see we have morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I'm coming from Manning, Alberta. It's just a small little town in Alberta. Get 3.5 hours from the Northwest Territories. Kind of chilly, even though it's sunny. So today, tight, and we want to talk about being the bigger person and what that means, and how to try to do it. So, Kat, where are you at today?
I've just stopped in Orléans. I'm going back up to Paris. So we had a little car problem. Otherwise, I would have been, ready seated and everything. But we had a little battery problem. Nothing, So we had to stop off, and we just stopped off at somewhere to have a coffee. And it's roasting here. So I don't know whether you can hear kids are screaming. I just sat right next to the game there. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear the kids.
Sorry, I didn't know. They've just arrived, obviously, but there you go. So being the bigger person, this is us right now.
Yeah, no worries. I have my son with me too. He's just playing. That's why we stopped at a park. I had a little bit of inspiration on this topic because I've been having a bit of a disconnect with people who are close to me. And, just being on different pages, different opinions, different perspectives on things.
Brittany, I don't know whether it's you, but you really keep. I
don't know whether it's we get into.
I can't see Brittany.
Arguing out with like.
Brittany, je sais pas si c'est elle ou moi, mais on n'entend rien. Et moi, je suis carrément coupée.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can't hear you. I don't know whether it's you or me. Yeah, is it you or is it me?
Okay. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem to be cutting out at all on my end, but it might be me going off of my phone's hotspot.
Uh-huh.
So you never know.
Okay, well, I didn't catch a word of that, so I'm sorry. I would have been of no use to you.
Oh, I wonder if it's going to be recorded right, though. We'll just go ahead with it and hope for the best. How's my audio?
Well, right now it's perfect, but a minute ago you were talking about something really important, and you just blacked out. So I don't know whether it was my screen was fine. I couldn't hear you, so I'm also off my hotspot. So could be either way.
Okay, well, we'll just go ahead with it. I'll just a quick recap. I'm just recalling on how often we will have falling out with people, and usually people we love, and it comes down to like different opinions, or we'll get caught up in a argument that's often where we will argue just to feel like we're right. And it's not everybody. I'm not, sometimes we'll catch ourselves doing it just slightly. But I just want to talk about like not showing up to disagreements or arguments and really being able to look at the big picture and the grand scheme of things and what's important. I know for myself, I'm currently going through like a bit of a disconnect in a really important relationship in my life, like a sibling, and it's really, really difficult to communicate. And often I get angry because we are thinking on completely different levels. And I picked a fight the other day, and it wasn't necessary. It was just because I was experiencing some emotions, and quickly I became aware of it, that it was my fault, that I had picked the fight, and back to realize, I just upset this person. Their defenses are up. Their ego is full blown, ready to battle. And I had to take a step back and realize that in the big picture, if I was going to be the bigger person, which doesn't mean backing down or not standing up for what you believe in, it just means. And sometimes when it's just a disagreement, you can agree to disagree. And it's tough to take that step back and say, I feel differently, but I'm going to walk away from this. Because in the grand scheme, in the big picture, it's just, and I was just stepping into like an egotistical battle for no reason. The topic came to me because of this experience.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience, in fact, where I was trying to make a person grow, and to make them grow, I tried to, well, we're talking children, obviously, or a client or something, and you try and make them see the bigger picture by giving articles or whatever it is, however you approach this particular person. And if they're not getting the point, or if they're not, then you do have to eventually come to a like a head-on collision. And we found ourselves in this spot, and the minute the tone rose, I just said, I'm not here to argue. I don't want to fight. So I just backed down. I sat down because this person was saying, yes, but can you read your body language? And so I thought, oh my God, okay, I'll just sit down, try and be as open as possible, and just really lowered my tone. And I tried to put all these things that I've learned into practice. And in fact, it was very efficient, because we were then able to have a discussion about this, the bigger picture of the point of view that I was just trying to get across or make that person understand. And it was quite an amazing moment afterwards. And that person has grown, and you see them, a little bit later on, that the relationship you have is so different. It's really very fulfilling also to be the bigger self, and to get away from the habits that you have of maybe just, I'll just argue this one out, and I'll be right because I want to be right and I know better.
That's right. Yeah.
So it was a great moment also.
Yeah, I find, like, if you're not dealing with someone who's evolved to a certain point, then you will have, like, I know someone who's very, very intelligent, but far from self-aware. And I'm not sure if I'm using the right terms. I say intelligent, like, a human dictionary, but just not self-aware. And you get into a battle with someone like that, it is, you're facing an ego. And there was a quote that I heard quite recently, and I it's unknown. I can't say who it was, but it was, a smart person knows what to say, but a wise person knows whether or not to say it. So I find this is really powerful, because when you are going head to head with an ego and you're aware of it, often your personal ego will flare up. And when that happens, the argument or the discussion is absolutely meaningless. It has absolutely no substance to it, and you'll never get to a conclusion or a solution. So realizing that you're in a situation like that, and just stepping back and choosing to not engage in it, and not pick up on the other person's energy, or if I find sometimes, like, before, if I was dealing with someone very irrational, I would fall into that and just argue to argue, and it's very unproductive. But yeah, it is empowering when you can put to practice what you learn. It's very empowering, because you realize how far you've come. And I've had a lot of those experiences, is where I picked this fight, and I had realized that I picked it. Now, I know still to this right now, I know that my feelings were legit. I was 100% in the right, but the way I went about dealing with it wasn't efficient, because I'm not dealing with someone who is evolved to the point where we can have that type of discussion or that understanding. So if I didn't realize that and take a step back, I would have picked a fight, had a fight with someone that I love dearly, my best friend, and more than best friend, my blood. It would have been catastrophic, and probably would have had a falling out and created more distance, as opposed to me saying, you know what, I just picked a fight with you because I'm feeling emotions that I don't know how to deal with right now. Instead of realizing that, it would have just went the opposite direction. Whereas instead, we were able to come together in a stronger manner, and we did put the subject aside because it was necessary. So it wasn't solved, but there comes a point when you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with disagreeing and moving forward, because there's no other option. Sometimes you cannot find a solution, and you just have to accept that you might be on a different page. And it's it's a lesson that I learned, and it did take me being the bigger person, even though I was the one that swooped to a lower level at the beginning. I had to be the bigger person because I just threw someone into a frenzy, and if I wasn't able to pick them up and pull them back out of that, then it would have just been a domino effect, you know, like, brr. It's really chilly, and my son just took his sweater off, and I you know, it's crazy what kids can put up with. It's off, sweetheart. It's too cold for the water. So anyway, yeah, I just thought it was a really important subject, and I know we want to be solution based. So for moving forward in a solution based direction, I would just say to keep the bigger picture in mind. You hear about a lot of families falling apart and friendships falling apart, and it's often over something that's just really not important. You know, unless you're creating distance with that person because you're very different and you're trying to grow. You know, that's a completely different subject. But to have falling outs, and sometimes it's a death or an illness or something. Oh, my son's about to go on the water park. Okay, go ahead then. And yeah, it takes a death or something for people to wake up and realize that these problems that we blow up into these huge things are really nothing if we could just put the ego aside, be the bigger person, and say, you know what, like, I disagree with you, but I'm okay with that, and I'm not going to show up to this argument because I love you too much for that. So yeah, I'll kind of hand it to you, Kat. If I don't know if you had any thoughts or. Oh,
totally in agreement. It's so much better to lay the ego aside, but that does take a certain amount of energy and a lot of work on yourself before you can, you know, step out of that argument and just say, you know, let's just move on. You know, we leave that aside. We try not to talk about that or deal with that later. You know, if it's a subject that needs to be brought up again, or of course it will have to be solved, or, you know, you'll try and talk about it when that person maybe has gone along the path, maybe not, you know, it just depends. But totally right, for people who you love dearly, it's a bit of a silly to have a family falling out because, you know, you've got two egos bashing together. It's best to just say, hey, you know, let's just push that aside and enough woods for everyone, you know, let's just go and have fun because it's a bit of a downer otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note of solving the disagreement, like, Kat, you're 100%. That's sometimes things do have to be solved. You can't just move on and ignore things, you know. And I think what I learned in this situation is that what we are arguing over, it does have to be solved because it's causing a lot of pain. But what I've learned is it can't be solved verbally. The person that I am dealing with needs support and understanding, and I can't. It's not verbal support and understanding. It's more energy and presence, and
I would say, but sorry,
go ahead, Kat.
I just wanted to there and say that already is a whole. I mean, you've gone 2 steps, if I may be so bold, because you've already gone. The first one is to take the ego out, and then the second step is to see how you can be of service to the situation. When the ego is taken out, it's, you know, well, how does this person need my help? How can I best help this person? And like you say, you know, sometimes she needs support and help. Sometimes you know, that person will just need for you to sit there with her and hold her hand. Other times she'll be screaming at you. Other times because, you know, she's going through her own evolutionary phase. So if you have the strength to be there to help that person through that particular breakthrough point, to pick up the discussion at the other end, then, you know, that's already so much growth. Oh, Dante! Look, my bestest friend, she's working.
Dante, look.
Hi.
Hello. C'est ma copine française, His granny's French. Donc on peut lui parler français. Yeah. But yes, we're going right off topic. So I think that's pretty big stuff for the listeners for this week. And we'll let you take care of Doctor, who's probably going to die any minute now. So you.
Yeah, he just went in the water park, and it's cold out. Like, I'm shivering.
Yeah, you got to jump.
Yeah, it is. And you know, we could even pick up on this topic again. I want to look more into it. I do want to. Yes, sweetheart. Oh yeah. Okay, we'll look at it in a minute. So I do want to dig a little deeper into this myself, just because of the lessons that I took from the situation.
Join us next week. Please join us next week. Put your comments in the box if you can't be there for next week. But please come and join us next week. We can have a bigger discussion. How's that? Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.